Are you the fanatic we're looking for? Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is the only interactive and dynamic mock draft simulator. Dynamic means that the picks from one mock draft will influence the players that team selects in the next mock draft. This can be done with a first-round challenge. This can be done with a second-round challenge. This will be done with any mock draft from the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has rank players functionality, allowing you to rank players and build your own big board and then compare your board to that of other users at the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has draft a team functionality. This allows 2 or more users to snake draft a team of 22 players from the rookie pool, and then you can debate which players you like at which position and why. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Well, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. We're a little bit later on a Monday, but glad you can be with us. Josh, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, Jim. Thank you again, Randall, for filling in on such last minute. First, before we get into anything, thoughts and prayers are with everybody in the California region, Los Angeles. What we're seeing going on is unbelievable, unfathomable. Just keeping thoughts for everybody there, keeping them in our prayers. But yeah, back with another Monday. We got a good group of receivers we're talking about today, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation about a lot of these guys.
Cool. Randall, thank you for filling in at last minute. How's your Monday
going?
I'll
do my best. Good. Yeah, I mean, can't reiterate that enough about the West Coast. I got some family there, but they're safe, fortunately. And then, Jim, I'll send you a link. There's a link going around for some Bills backers to support as well for awesome. Buffalo sending some money out there. So we're donating. So I'll send that link out.
Cool. So on Mondays, we've been revisiting some of the wide receiver scouting reports that were done earlier during the, let's say, mid-season, and then also focusing on some Senior Bowl players. It's ironic, though, that some of the Senior Bowl players were high variance wide receivers. So we covered about 10 2 weeks ago. We're covering 8 more today. And we're just going to kind of talk about the players a little bit to try to establish maybe where some of the quality is in this wide receiver class. We're starting today off with a really good receiver, and that's Luther Burden. And Josh, you want to tell everybody what they should know about Mr. Luther Burden from Missouri?
So if you don't know about Luther Burden already, last year he was one of the highlight guys that everybody was looking forward to coming into this year's class. He was the name of the name with Tedero McMillan of being the top guy of this wide receiver class. And his production dipped this year, but the traits are absolutely still there when you watch Luther Burden. Now, this is a guy that's primarily played in the slot, but he has shown some inside-outside versatility, but he's going to be making his money in the slot as a gadget guy. But this isn't your typical slot guy. He's 5'11", 2/10", but 208 pounds, and he uses that play strength very well, and you can see it at the catch point, and you can see it with his yards after catch. He has the amazing speed. He's a 4.3 guy, probably sitting somewhere in the mid-4.3s. if he runs at the combine, but he has the play strength as well to not only outrun defenders in the yards after catch, but break arm tackles and break overall tackles in the open field as well. That's going to be his calling card at the next level. And he also brings good attributes as a pure receiver. He can win on all 3 levels of the field. You see against Georgia's tape last year, he can win one-on-one with man coverage draped on him. He shows the body control to catch over top of himself. He has the whole overall package of a receiver that's 6'2", but he's condensed in a 5'11", 205 body. Really interesting archetype you can do a lot with in the NFL. There are some negatives, though. If you look at it overall, his release isn't going to be the most outstanding. How much is he going to play on the outside at the next level? Is that something you can count on? And then something that's nitpicked for me a little bit, seeing Luther Burden this year, the production took a step down, obviously. And that's not all his fault. That's dependent on the quarterback, the offense, etc. That's not all on him. But some of the plays that you'll watch Luther Burden, Missouri's offense is so one read centered that if he knows he's not involved in the play or the progression, he'll make a half-ass effort to make an effort on a run block, or he won't participate in all 100% of the plays, which is something that I'll write in the side of my notes. I won't really put too much stock into it, but that's something I want to see at the Senior Bowl. How competitive is this guy? Because if you get the juices flowing with him, he's an ultra-competitive athlete with all the traits you are looking for. So traits alone, I had to look back to see if he was a first or second round guy for me. He's kind of like that Curtis Samuel, Golden Tate type build. So he's teetering along there. You question what his ceiling is going to be at the NFL, but I'm willing to bet on it if that motor starts showing up a little bit better because he's really, really well-rounded. So he's wide receiver 4 for me, but he is a firm first-round grade. And even if he slips into the 20s of some part of this draft, he'll be definitely a good take for a good offensive coordinator that knows how to use him well.
Yeah. And Randall, what do you have on Burden?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with all that. Mentioning Missouri, it's kind of rough. You had Theo Wees on the other side. And then it came down to that first read where you almost knew what was going to happen when you're watching that All-22, who it was going to end up going to, and then it just kind of shut that off. So, yeah, the 2024 numbers, typically I'm so heavy on hoping that there's good production out of it to match that tape, but this is the one wide receiver where I really don't care that much, to be honest with you, the way he is set up. I like the Curtis Samuel reference to it. That's really good because he's that gadget guy that could go like in 2019 for Carolina. That was huge, using him in the run game and things along those lines. But then I think he has a better contact balance in kind of a Debo-esque, where, that's what I kind of want to see at the Senior Bowl is him getting a slant and then him actually trying to rough up a DB to show that kind of intuitive, like, I'm here to fight sort of thing. So I very much agree with you on that. Show me that fight at the Senior Bowl, and don't go too hard on it with the coaches and things along those lines. But to be honest, he should run at 4.45. I think that's really good for his speed and explosion on it. His depth's good. It's everywhere, all over the place. I love his gadget ability. I do believe his soft hands and his route running and his toughness at the stem kind of makes it a QB friendly in year one. So he can line. Me and Jim did a podcast last night. He ended up in the 20s, which I do believe he might go maybe in the teens. I do have him as a round one grade as well, but he ended up falling to like the Houston Texans, and I think that's a perfect fit for CJ Stroud. Like that, they are looking for a wide receiver now with Tank Dell out next year, things along those lines. So I think that's like one of the perfect fits. I think CJ would love that sort of thing. So I like his QB friendly and his depth all over the place. I do agree. Senior Bowl, just show me that attitude and his willingness to just step up against a DB every single time. And then he just remains in the first round, Mm-hmm. So just keep that first round grade on that offseason, then you're good to go.
And I'd like to clarify, I do not believe Luther Burden is at the Senior Bowl.
Oh,
so
I'm
the
sorry.
First two receivers we're covering are not at the Senior Bowl. They're being covered because they're high variance.
Okay, got it.
Meaning that the grades that were given when we covered them before were far apart, so we were just covering them again.
Got it.
After we did the first two.
I have him as wide receiver 2, as Josh has wide receiver 4.
Okay. And you both have first-round grades on them?
Correct.
I do.
Okay. And Josh, you have Burden higher than McMillan, right?
No. So McMillan is 3, and then Burden is 4. I admit they're graded equally. I just McMillan's got rare hands, very rare hands.
Yeah.
So I think you may have moved McMillan up since the last time.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of adjusting, but Burden ends the first-round grades for my wide receivers. So Burden, McMillan, Ibuka, and then I categorize Hunter as a wide receiver as well. Those 4 are my only first-round receivers.
Okay.
Not much variance on today's pod.
Okay. So the next receiver we're going to cover, and again, high variance means pay attention to, like, if you're watching other podcasts on rating wide receivers, Isaiah Bond tends to be in a lot of different places on a draft board. So again, Josh, and I'm about to call Randall Jake. It's just, wow. Okay. So Randall's keeping Jake's seat warm. But as Josh and Randall go through Bond, I'm curious to see if they see him the same way. But I know that there's a lot of different grades on Bond. So Josh, what do you have on Isaiah Bond?
So if you would have asked me in October where I had Isaiah Bond, definite top 32 pick for me. If you're asking me where I have Isaiah Bond now, that's a big discussion. So let's take for Isaiah Bond who he is. Transfer from Alabama. He's 5'10", 6/10 inch, 180 pounds. So limited in that slot receiver role as well, but can line up on the outside because of that speed. When we're talking about speed, this is an elite speed athlete. If you get him in the open field, if you get him on those deep vertical routes, he can outrun anybody from any alignment. That's going to be his calling card no matter what. But you have seen a decrease, whether it's been his nagging injuries this year, overall confidence fitting into a new scheme with Sarkisian, but the body control, his hands, his overall mental processing, it's taken a step down this year, which is weird because when you first saw him in the first 4 games of the season, you're like, all right, Isaiah Bond's going to fit beautifully into this offense. He's going to have a key role, be the wide receiver one, take the stress off of Quinn Ewers, give him those deep shot abilities, and it just hasn't come to fruition, whether it's been through injury or overall lack of confidence. But you need to see Isaiah Bond get back to where he was last year, being that deep, explosive threat with Jalen Milroe at Alabama, just taking the top off of defenders and beating people yards after catch with his speed. He is an elite speed athlete, but like we've mentioned, need to see improvements in the body control, need to see improvement in the concentration drops. He's not going to bring you much as a blocker, so that's already a negative and a deterrent right there. And it's just overall mental processing and mental toughness with him. I know you've had the injuries, but everybody has gone through injuries this year. How well are you able to respond and compete at the highest level? And we've seen over the playoff run in the past 5-6 games that it's just not the same Isaiah Bond we're seeing. So this is definitely still a top 100 prospect. Do not get me wrong. The traits are real. The speed is real, and it translates to the next level. But there is some things that we got to work on. He has dropped a lot for me. He sits in the 3rd round for me. As of now, he is my wide receiver 11th, and we're going to talk about 2 guys that are higher than him on this podcast today and 2 guys that are lower than him. So we're going to kind of get a gauge of who I feel has proved better than Bond this year and who's slightly under because of those traits. But elite speed athlete, maybe returns next year to get one more year under his belt, but still a top 100 guy to me.
So yeah, Randall, how about you?
Yeah, I have him around that area, but I mean the same thing. I was beginning of the year looking at him as Xavier Worthy got drafted, ran the crazy 40. And then you had Isaiah Bond at Texas as well. Then I wanted to kind of compare and contrast, see how well he does in Texas, and then to see if he would be like that predecessor in the next draft or for this draft for how he's going to run the 40. Can he get close to Xavier Worthy and stuff like that? So I was very excited. I do believe that the lingering ankle injury, which is very unfortunate for a wide receiver, coming into the draft is what kind of lingered. I believe it was week 9 is when he suffered it and he kept lingering it. And then Matthew Golden, I mean, big props to him I think he had that opportunity and he took that opportunity and ran with it, which was very good. And his stock it's almost like you're almost flipping Golden and Bond's draft, like literally. It's almost like you could put Matthew Golden in a mid-second now while you put Bond at a round 4 for me. But it is a lingering issue. I mean, and then Matthew Golden taking over. If you look past it at week 11, he's getting 5 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, 2 targets down the road. Then you look at Matthew Golden, he's getting 5 targets, 9 targets, 12 targets, 10 targets, 6 targets, right? So Quinn Ewers found it in Matthew Golden, and he stuck with him. Honestly, rightfully so at that point. You look at what you got in the reliability, and I think he just lost his confidence, and I think he's got to go back to school to get that confidence back. You look at the Ohio State game when he jumped for that slant, and he dropped it sort of thing. I mean, that was just that you could tell that that's kind of a microcosm of the second half of the year for Isaiah Bond with that jumping shows no confidence and then dropping just a little bit of the year experience on the targets in the second half of the season. So I hope he goes back to school. Kind of almost
we should find out Thursday if he goes back, right?
Yeah.
It's Thursday this week.
Wednesday or Thursday, one of the 2.
I think it's the players have to notify by Tuesday. Results are in Wednesday, and the list is sent to NFL teams on Thursday. So I assume that we find out as the general public on Thursday.
For sure. But, I mean, I do like everything. And Isaiah Bond at his 100% is a round 1 grade for sure. I mean, his route running super clean. Even though he's 5'10", he stands tall. Basically, when I see him at the stem, I almost think he's almost running a go route every single time. That's how well he stands up. And so that just kind of makes everybody play soft on him. And that he can get those intermediate. He's the most efficient intermediate routes, which is incredible, as well as being a field stretcher. So I hope that he just goes back to school and gets back to round run in 2026. That's kind of my goal, but I'm rooting for him. I like Isaiah Bond and his style.
Okay. So at this point, we've covered, again, 2 weeks ago, we covered Igbuka and Isle Manor. And then we've covered Bond and Burden today. So where do you have Igbuka on your board, Josh?
He is wide receiver 2, contrary to the popular opinion.
And Randall, where is he on your board?
He's wide receiver 3 for me. I mean, and he's shown it in the playoffs too. He's a dog. I love Igbuka. He does everything. He does everything well. He's a lunch pail guy. He will block. He blocks well. He just does everything right. He's got a great motor on him. I would love him. I mean, I think he's a perfect fit for Pittsburgh, but I see him as a first rounder as well.
Got it. And then where do each of you have Isle Manor?
Isle Manor for me is wide receiver 5. He's in the top 40. He's teetering on that late first, early second round to me, but he's the next of the next I'm taking.
Okay. And Randall, how about you?
It's the same for me, unfortunately. I love Isle Manor too, but in my defense, Jim, I did wide receivers and cornerbacks with Bill, and Bill almost talked about Isle Manor every single day. So it's like propaganda in my head. But Isle Manor, I mean, Stanford didn't do him any favors, so the production does not match the tape for Isle Manor as well, just like Luther Burden, because Stanford quarterback was bad. Their system was not for Isle Manor. Good for him for coming out this year and just showing who he is, sort of thing. So, have that. I love having a Canadian wide receiver getting in the draft. Go for it.
Teams are going to love his age as well. He is the youngest,
Yes.
one of the youngest in this class.
100%.
And so the reason that I was kind of level setting that is we're about to go through 6 more wide receivers. And if everybody listening kind of has an idea as to how how Randall and Josh see Bond and Burden, and they start saying, well, he's behind Bond or he's ahead of Bond but behind Burden, you'll have a better idea. So that was the reason that just kind of setting that stage. So the next wide receiver, and this is a player that's at the Senior Bowl, is wide receiver Arian Smith from Georgia. So Randall, do you want to start with Arian Smith and then we'll pivot to Josh?
Absolutely. Let me just pull it up real quick. Use my last guy. All right. So Arian Smith is 6 foot. Sorry. Oh, there we go. 6 foot 185, slim build. He's got 48 catches this year for 800 yards, but only 4 touchdowns. Probably my favorite thing for Arian Smith is his quick speed. His first initial burst is kind of insane. Watching him, it looks like he's almost skating on ice. That's how quick it is. And he does deceive on that stem of the route for those go routes. Like his style, like that he was at Georgia. I think when we're talking about the Senior Bowl, the most important thing, which it gives me PTSD from last year with Tez Walker from UNC, is his 10 drops. And he is a vertical stretcher. He's basically out wide 80% of the time in that system. So if you're looking at deep shots, he has 10 drops, which is brutal at a 17% rate. And then when you're looking at passes over 20 yards, he's got 4 touchdowns, but with 3 touchdowns and 4 drops. So he's dropped more than he's kind of getting in the touchdown. The average depth of target that Carson Beck has thrown him is 35 yards, so it is a bomb. But it almost, I'm not going to say that it cancels it out sort of thing, but when you're a field stretcher where you're throwing bombs, moon balls at 35, 40 yards, I would like to see you not drop as many as you are receiving sort of thing. So that's kind of like an issue that I have. But the best thing about that is the Combine and the Senior Bowl is going to have, Combine's going to have the gauntlet. Senior Bowl is going to have that, a bunch of reps that he's going to hold. If he doesn't drop the ball, I'm kind of almost willing to look in the future, then the past, and kind of go from there and then assess him during this offseason. But Josh, what did you see?
Yeah, I'm right with you. This is a guy that we're talking about has the good traits, like we mentioned with Bond. This is the only other guy I have in this class with an elite speed grade, and you obviously see it on film. Like what you said, his first step getting off the line of scrimmage, he can get past people so quickly. But Georgia kind of limited his route tree a little bit. They kind of just let him be that underneath or go just straight downfield guy. So you didn't really see the diversity in the route running for me. And that's something I'm going to keep my eyes on at the Senior Bowl a lot. How efficient Is he working the intermediate, breaking over the middle of the field, working those double moves on post corners? Can he do that? Because I think he has the speed and athletic ability to really break down anybody's leverage and get past them. That's not a question for me. But this is a developmental receiver just on the fact that you've had so much experience at Georgia, but your hands are, for better lack of terms, putrid, and your body control just isn't there yet for a guy that's going to be a deep vertical stretcher, but he has the flashes on tape that shows that he can do it. So it's in the toolbox. The consistency is just not there, and Georgia has been really trying to get the consistency down for 2+ years with Smith, and it's coming every now and then, but it's just the full picture's not together yet. So this is a guy on day 3 you're going to take a shot on. You love the traits, you love the work ethic, you love the hard-nosed ability that he brings to the football field. Your type of receiver, like you mentioned. It's just putting it all together for me. Also, just want to see the route tree improve. That's all for me. See the drops, need them improved. See the route tree, because this guy's got the goods to separate with anybody in this class. So day 3 developmental guy for me, but if he gets with the right coaching staff, in a couple years, this guy could absolutely make an impact on an offense.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next wide receiver, Randall, you want to tell us about Jalen Royals from Utah State?
Yes, absolutely. Jalen Royals, 6 foot, 205. He was a must watch coming into 2024, and then obviously that injury hit, which was very unfortunate. But he was definitely a must see. He's was a 0-start recruit for JUCO, went to Utah State and transferred to Utah State, which I love. I always love seeing the 0-star recruits, and then they up their value in between college, with the transfer portal and things along those lines. He's got a 76-inch high jump and has that long speed to counter with it. So I mean, he is a vertical threat, and he can get up and he can make those contested catches. 2023, he had 17 contested catches, catching 74% of them. Absolutely nuts. So really what I'm looking for, which I'm very excited that his medicals will be good to go for the combine and the Senior Bowl. So he got that invite. He's going to play, as he said, so I'm excited for that. So really, I'm just looking to see what he's at 2024 at the Senior Bowl and what can he do. He's a savvy route runner. Yards per route run were 3, which was fantastic. The stem is great. The release is great. He might be my most favorite or most exciting wide receiver to watch because he did not play this much this year. So that Senior Bowl and that combine, I think, is where we know who he is, and the national media is going to start hyping him up, and then his stock will start rising. But Josh, what did you see?
No, absolutely. Jalen Royals, if you haven't watched his tape yet, please go watch his tape. One of the most enjoyable, and you love rooting for the underdogs. He has produced mightily at Utah State. He's a well-rounded receiver, very versatile, can fit in almost every offense. High-effort player, is going to give it in the running game as well as a blocker. You love his patience when he sets up his routes. He works the middle of the field like a demon, can separate quickly over the top of the field. He can really make plays at all 3 levels. And one thing that I really like to see is the timing of his routes, especially in the middle of the field. He's not Stephon Diggs, but he runs middle of the field routes like Stephon Diggs. The way he sets up the breaks in his separation, and he breaks off right when the timing needs to be right. It's almost a second nature instinct for Jalen Royals, and that's something that I've not seen from anybody else in this draft class, and it's something that's really going to get on the good side of a lot of scouts that are going to be watching him at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine. They're going to have that in the back of their head. But really, when we get to the Senior Bowl, we need to see how healthy he is, how quickly is he able to come back and really get to 100%. Is he still the same receiver? I don't doubt he is, not at all. And how is he going to do against higher level of competition? There's going to be some dogs at the Senior Bowl, and they're competing their asses off. They're giving Jalen Royals everything they got. And that might bump Jalen Royals' stock down a little bit if he doesn't adjust right away, but I don't care. Turn on the game film. This guy's very versatile and can win in a multitude of ways. This is Bill said it in the comments, he's a top 75 guy for me. I have a 3rd-round grade on him, but if he has a really good showing at the Senior Bowl and he really, really, really starts to get the draft hype, might go back and watch his film, maybe bumping up a little bit, but really, really like Jalen Royals.
I am, yeah. I think the Stephon Diggs was a very good call at that intermediate, and probably the only person that reminded me of Diggs in the class is maybe like Ty Felton. Ty Felton has some Stephon Diggs to him, but yeah, between those two, the uniqueness that you have in that 6 foot, 200-pound frame, but willing to do it all is one of the most beautiful things. That's one of my favorite prototypes.
Okay, next player, Josh, want to tell us about Jaylin Lane from Virginia Tech?
Yeah, so people are going to go through the Senior Bowl list and go, why is there 2 Virginia Tech receivers in this class just casually showing up at the Senior Bowl? And while they might not have the production numbers, they are there for a reason and they serve a purpose. Now, don't get me wrong, this is going to be a depth piece wide receiver at the next level, the way you project him. He has good traits, good speed. He's really well built, 196 pounds at that 5'9", 5'10" range. Solid hand. You love the separation quickness, especially over the middle of the field. Good yard after catch threat. One of those smaller receivers. He can work on the outside, but he's going to get limited to the slot at the next level. Body control, catching traffic, something he can improve on, as well as his release, in my opinion. But this guy is going to make his money as a returner. One of the best punt returners, kick returners in this class. This is a guy immediately you start day one as your returner, and he might get you to the Pro Bowl. Like, he might get a Pro Bowl nod year one as a returner. He's that good. And sorry, I just got a text message, but
that's all right. It happens.
I thought it was me.
Really good returner. It's going to prove as a depth piece. What I want to see from him as a receiver at the Senior Bowl, just how he runs those routes, how he creates separation cleanly. Is he able to win with physicality? How diverse is his route tree? Just overall receiving ability. How does it stack up compared to everybody else? Because everybody's got a notch on him coming in. Same with Daquan Felton. Everybody's got a notch coming in. They got their traits, but they have something to prove at the Senior Bowl with their route running ability. So really excited to see that. But this is an awesome returner, like maybe Pro Bowl returner day one.
So Bill thinks you're getting some breaking news.
No.
If only we could all be chef there. I don't know if I want his hours, though.
Yeah, Deion Sanders is going to interview for the Cowboys head coaching job. That's breaking news every day.
They just want it. They just want attention. Yeah, that ain't happening.
Yeah, so Randall, what do you have on Jaylin Lane?
But yeah, I always love as a Buffalo Bills fan, our wide receiver 4 or 5 is dedicated, except for this year, to being able to be a kick returner or a punt returner sort of thing. So the 2 positions in one job is where you get drafted in the day 3 or day 2 sort of thing. So I do love that. 8.3 yards after the catch per reception. So you're right, he's shifty. He has that kind of, in his receiving depth, which I was looking at, he has that kind of Isaiah McKenzie-esque gadget style with punt returning and catching turning. So Senior Bowl, I'm just looking to see what he goes up against with those other DBs on him while running those routes. Because, Virginia Tech always has those good names coming out. And obviously wide receivers don't come out often at Virginia Tech. So how does his scheme and how he was built and learned in the Virginia Tech system translate to other bigger DBs and bigger schools and how he translates to that? So I'm interested to see how his Senior Bowl does just on one-on-one reps. And then obviously I do believe that you're right with the kick return and punt return. You draft them and develop them into a wide receiver.
Okay. Next player, Tez Johnson, Josh.
If Tez Johnson wasn't the size that he was, everybody would be jumping on Tez Johnson. He's first round talented. Same thing, very, very eerily similar to Tank Dell. He's not as crisp of a route runner as Tank Dell, but that size and that breakaway ability, Tez is probably better than. So let's categorize this guy. He's a slot receiver at the NFL. Do not want him anywhere else. Seriously, you don't even try to line him up on the outside. Play speed, really good. Let me get to him real quick. Good release off the line of scrimmage for a smaller guy. He can really get off the line and get people to trail his hip easily, and he can create the separation from there. Good hands, don't have to worry about that. For a smaller guy as well, he can make those body control catches. He can catch outside of his frame. He's really controlled in his body, and he's not really like flailing out there. He's not out of control. Very, very smart in the open field. I'll say that. Separation quickness is going to be up there with everybody else just because of that play speed, that athletic ability. Translates to yards after catch as well. He's not going to bring you much as a blocker. You don't want him blocking at all. But his mental processing, toughness, you know exactly what you're getting out of Tez Johnson. He's those type of receivers that he's going to translate his skills really well. You're not going to ask him to do anything outside of his frame. And he's going to be a quarterback-friendly wide receiver. Imagine if he gets back with Bo Nix in Denver, if he gets there to the 3rd round. Instant production right away. Even if he doesn't, like a Ravens offense, something like that, where he works those short intermediate parts and uses shiftiness in the open field, he's going to make a lot of plays in the NFL. Don't let the size fool you. But he sits in the 3rd round for me just because of that size. This isn't a guy that's going to go over top of anybody, make those athletic catches, but you're not going to ask him to. Tank Dell, like Not as crisp as a route runner, but same body, eerily similar athlete to me.
Yeah, no, I very much agree. And I like to think that like they're very similar, but I do like Tez Johnson's run after the catch a little bit better. I think he's more elusive and he uses every inch of the field. I believe it was the Ohio State game where he caught an intermediate crosser and then it looked like at the 9 or 8 yard line he had no more room, but then gained 3 or 4 yards out of nowhere because he is that 160-pound frame. So that's obviously easier for you to kind of like slip past DBs and things along those lines. But he has but I do love him, and I'm a big fan, and I obviously have this down as I would like him to go to Denver because, the Knicks adopted him when he was in college and things along those lines. So they're brothers. Bo Nix helped him a lot, kind of like steady down. He's got a great mentality, what he went through in life, being adopted by the Knicks while still knowing his mom and getting his mom to finally a game and stuff like that. It's just a great story, and I feel like that's mentally tough. That's going to help him even though he is that 160 frame. I have him in the round 3 exactly for your reason being his size, 160 pounds. I love Tank Dell and I loved him coming out, but he's got 2 injuries now. And it's so unfortunate to say that history, like that history can repeat itself because it can. So the 60-pound frame kind of scares me a little bit, but he does. If he could get up to like 165, 170, that'd be incredible. I have him as a round 3, same thing. Then the Senior Bowl will be honestly a lot of fun to watch him move in his shiftiness, and I think that could kind of raise his stock.
Yeah, and this is one of the receivers at the Senior Bowl. We're not going to be looking to see if he's going to make plays. We know this guy is going to make
100%.
plays. It's how it's just going to be fun to watch.
I want to see dust, right? At least once. Just give me dust, and then I'll be like, okay, next receiver go.
Okay, so Tez compared to Isaiah Bond, who's higher? Randall.
In October, it was clearly Isaiah Bond, but now it's Tez Johnson based on, unfortunately, availability, injury concern. Again, Isaiah Bond with a lingering ankle issue. I just don't like wide receivers with lingering ankle issues, so please just come back next year. Right now, it's Tez Johnson, but if I were to say who is the better athlete, I would say Isaiah Bond.
Completely agree with Randall. Wide receiver 10 is Tez Johnson. Wide receiver 11 is Isaiah Bond. They are right next to each other.
For sure.
Right, and you have Tez in round 3. And did you say Bond was 3 or 4?
Bond has moved to round 3 for me.
Okay. It was Bill, I think, that said he was round 4 in the chat, and I was just mixing up where you had him with where Bill was.
Gotcha.
So I see Lee Harvey in the chat. So, Lee, it is great to see you. I believe you're going to be podcasting with us shortly. So, Lee, if you're still listening, tell us where you have Tez Johnson on your board. Ryan Sparks, thank you for participating. Wide receiver 7. So, Ryan, who is 6 and who is 8? So, and who do you have higher, Tez or Bond?
And Ryan makes a great point right there. For Tez Johnson's body type and being a smaller receiver, he's able to beat man-to-man coverage so effortlessly. That athletic ability and that body control on those release and getting to the stem, it's effortless for him. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see him.
100%.
Cool. And then, Bill, remind me in the chat, do you have Johnson or Bond higher? And while those guys are doing that, we're going to pause for a quick commercial before we do our last 2 wide receivers. So, Randall, do you want to take a minute and tell everybody kind of who you are and how they can find your content?
All right, yeah, I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky, both at Randall Slifer, so you can get me there. Pretty much 100% of it is all on Twitter for me at the moment, and then obviously I'm doing as much draft content with Draft Professor as I can, trying to get in once or twice a week. And that's about it. Yeah. Social media.
Cool. And Josh.
Pat Bryant. Oops, sorry.
Okay. He's a Pat Bryant fan as well. Anyways, my name is Josh Townsend. You can find me on Twitter at juice_T23. I'm with Scout's Eye View. As you heard the text message prior, we're just getting that started again. That was the message you guys heard. So we're getting that going for you guys. You're going to get a lot of in-depth scouting reports, a lot of thoughts from a lot of different regions, from a bunch of guys that are working in college football right now and a bunch of other guys that are aspiring to get to that point. So we're going to be bringing that to you guys very shortly. We'll be at the Senior Bowl in a couple weeks, so stay tuned. You're going to get live feed from us being there, as well as our analysis afterwards, what we've thought after every practice. So you're going to get a lot of content coming from the Draft Professor channel. So make sure that you guys are liking everything, subscribing, staying tuned. Follow Jim on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. Make sure to follow Randall. He's always been one of the mainstays in this channel, keeping everything going. One of the behind-the-scenes guys that really gets everything going. So a lot of efforts being put into this, and you guys are getting premier content. So be sure to stay tuned.
Cool. So, and I'll give a commercial here for the entire channel. So this channel has daily draft content. It is great to see Lee, Ryan, Bill in the chat. And these are people that are helping pump out daily draft content. So Mondays, it's usually Jake and Josh. And Jake had an internet issue after he moved. So Randall is an emergency fill-in. Greatly appreciated, Randall.
Thank you.
Oh, you got it.
Tuesdays, which would be tomorrow, you will see Bill and Parker doing defensive backs, and there's going to be one other person doing defensive backs with them tomorrow, and that person right now is immediately escaping me, but I probably should have known that already. Wednesdays, you'll see Randall and Jacob doing tight ends, and they have a guest that's going to be doing tight ends with them on Wednesday as well. Thursdays, you're going to see, normally it's Newt and Owen. Newt won't be here this week, parent-teacher conferences. So it's going to be Owen, and I believe it's Clint and Cole doing an interior offensive line big board. Friday, we will have Senior Bowl coverage, and I will verify, I believe it's going to be Cole and Anthony, I believe, doing the Senior Bowl coverage on Friday. So we have podcasts coming at you every day about something with the draft. And if you go to the YouTube channel, we've been doing this for a few months, so you can see scouting reports on nearly every player in the top 175. I think we missed a UCLA linebacker. I think that's the only player.
We did. Yes, we did. About that. I can't wait to watch this film. Everybody's hyping him up.
But you can see Jake and Josh doing running backs and linebackers. You can see Randall and Bill doing corners and wide receivers. It's all on the YouTube channel. So there's a lot of great information about the players that are in the draft. So if your team just got eliminated from the playoffs and you're trying to sort through who are the names in the draft, we've done scouting reports very similar to this episode. We just weren't focused on the Senior Bowl when we were doing it in October and November. So you'll hear two people discussing the player, very similar to how Randall and Josh are discussing the wide receivers today. So I think it's good content, but feel free, if you are a first-time listener, go back and check the YouTube channel out, pick the position that you like, and you'll hear multiple people giving you their opinions on the position. At this point, every position's been covered by at least 4 people, kind of thing. So just a lot of good content. And with that, we're going to now pivot back to Jayden Higgins from Iowa State. So, Randall, do you want to kick off Jayden Higgins?
Sure. I'll try not to steal too much information from Josh because I know he's jacked up. All right. Jayden Higgins. I'm also pretty high on Jayden Higgins. We're looking at 6'4", 215. Going to run a 4.55 40 is my guess. From Eastern Kentucky, transferring over to Iowa State. My favorite thing about that transfer is once he transferred, he immediately took a leadership role and just kind of took off going sort of thing. Stats are great. Love his frame. Junior year, he had 87 catches, 1185 yards and 9 touchdowns. Big body style X receiver, but he's actually really shifty and quick in the short and intermediate game, and that's what I kind of love about it. When I was watching his film, I was like kind of confused because I saw 6'4", 215, started watching him. I was like, okay, X, let's hit deep posts, things like that, and kind of see. But they used him a lot in the short and intermediate, and his twitchiness is impressive. I kind of almost wish that Iowa State gave him a little bit more deep shots because he does have really good body control, and he can get up on those contested catches. but he is a beast in all facets. He had 14 contested catches on 24 contested opportunities, accounting for 66 first downs. He's finding those sticks on a constant basis. His stem is good. Yards per route run were 5, I believe, for the year, which is second or third in the collegiate year this year. Kind of love everything about him. When going into the Senior Bowl, I just want to see a little bit better how he does against competition. I think he's going to do great against competition. It's just kind of showcasing his talents and seeing if he can accomplish that, which I do believe. I mean, we're looking at Texas, probably the most difficult game, and he went seven targets, 7 receptions for 100 yards.
Yeah.
So that was super impressive. I love everything about him. I got a round 2 grade on him. I believe, a lot of this class is a lot of X-style receivers, so it's hard to almost like put that in there to figure out where he's going to go with the amount of X that might come up before him, sort of thing. And then you have the Restrepos, Bonds, and stuff like that that's going to get sprinkled in. So I have him as a round 2 grade. I'm excited to watch. I'm really excited to watch him at the Senior Bowl. Excited to watch him at the Combine and things like that. But Josh, what did you see?
Jayden Higgins he's finding his way to rise up every single way on my board. This guy I recently just watched, and this is also a guy that I'm going to have a lot to gain from me at the Senior Bowl personally, just because I know what he already brings. I just want to see if it translates against a higher level of competition, plain and simple. Like you mentioned, for being an X-style receiver, his route running over the short and intermediate parts of the field, astonishing. Like third-year level NFL astonishing. Like he's already a pro, but he's a transfer from Eastern Kentucky, and this is, I believe, first season at Iowa State. Don't know off the top of my head, but
it is, yeah.
Really, really impressive when you watch that. Not going to be the fastest guy in the world. Not going to be the overly yards after catch guy when he catches the intermediate pass. He'll move the sticks. He'll get the first downs, but he's not going to outrun anybody. And that's really the only deficit you can say on his name. Really good body control, especially on those deep vertical routes. He has the separation quickness, the reliable hands, good play strength. He's going to bring it as a blocker. He's mentally tough. He's versatile. He's checks off a lot of boxes. The reason why I say I'm going to be watching him heavily at the Senior Bowl, I want to see what he does in press coverage. One-on-one when a guy jams you, how is your release? Because he's got the traits and he's got the ability to beat anybody off the line of scrimmage. How consistent is that for me, especially against higher level of competition and DBs that are going to be pressing your higher center of gravity? That's going to be the one thing I'm honing in on Jayden Higgins. And if he impresses right there, yeah, he's moving really close to the top 50. He's like my 66 prospect. So he's teetering on that late second, early third, finding every way, trying to get him into the second round. There's a lot of good guys in this draft, though. So sits right there for me. I'm very, very impressed with Jayden Higgins.
For sure. Yeah. Do you remember last year during the Senior Bowl, Javon Baker's catch at the corner pylon and that release? Yes. I'm looking for something like that out of Jayden Higgins, and then I'll be like, okay, yeah, let's move on, sort of thing.
That's absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was listening to both of you describe him, and while I think I already know the answer, if I said Higgins or Io Manor, you both have Io Manor higher than Higgins right now.
Yes.
Yes.
And why?
I believe that Io Manor at the stem, I like his releases at the stem of his route a little bit better. And I think that his Io Manor's sideline control is really good. And his touchdowns are impressive coming down with acrobatic catches. I think Io Manor right now, probably because he's had more consistency and and Jayden Higgins' only first year at Iowa State, kind of puts Io Manor in a little bit over the head. But I wouldn't be surprised if these two going toe to toe.
No, very eerily similar, and I would agree right there. It's not Odell Beckham-esque, but when you watch the highlight acrobatic catches, it's for a guy that big at that size, you should be able to head top people one-on-one down the sideline. You shouldn't be able to turn your body 180 a different side and catch the ball with your left shoulder. Io Manor does that, and he's still only 20, 21 years old, and he's got so much room to develop as well. That's younger, more traits, and more spectacular catches for me.
Okay. And then another day 1 or day 2 wide receiver, Xavier Restrepo. So, Josh, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah. So Xavier Restrepo, has been consistent, durable, and everything and more for that Miami offense. He's 5'9", 5'10" inches, 195 pounds. When you look at him, he doesn't look that big, but he's able to break arm tackles so easily when he's in the open field. Very well built, a little bit Luther Burden-esque, but not as athletic. Love the play speed, really underrated play speed. This is a guy that can outrun defenders, not get it twisted. Doesn't really ask much to go one-on-one against anybody, so the release is questionable for me. I have it as solid, but really reliable hands, really good in separating, really good yard after catch. His body control is good for his size, solid athletic ability, like I mentioned. Willing blocker, he doesn't have the prowess or the body type to really be an effective blocker, but he shows the willingness, he shows the toughness. This is a guy that's going to get his head on a hat and really just try to make disruption no matter what. He's that type of football player. You love the mental processing and toughness that he brings. But I'm going to be a little bit lower on Restrepo just because, one, how is he going to fit in an offense outside of Cam Ward? Now, if you're drafting him with Cam Ward, this is one of the few receivers I want to see pair with your quarterback. You'll see somebody take a shot at Jackson Dart. Let's see if they pair him with Trey Harris or Jordan Watkins, who's come out. I think if you're going to draft Cam Ward, whoever team does, your contingency plan, either in the second or third round, I have a third round grade on him, but if your contingency plan is to draft Cam Ward, you better draft Restrepo in the second round because he is going to make the transition for both Restrepo and Cam Ward so much easier translating to the pros. They have an in-net connection with them that the timing's always there. He's a safety blanket, and I think he's going to do that for any quarterback that he gets with, but that will just only enhance his development at the next level. I think it's going to take a little bit for him to get into a role, but this is a guy that if there's not an alpha wide receiver on a team, you can kind of see him take a little bit of a Julian Edelman type of role where he gets the main targets, the main receptions, even though he's not the overly big, athletic, can really outbox, not those bigger type of receivers, those X's and those Z's that we've been talking about a lot recently. But I have a third round grade on him, top 100 guy for me. For me, again, one-on-one coverage. How are you able to beat one-on-one coverage, and can you beat it consistently? The route tree's there. The speed's there. It's really underrated. Just how are you able to beat one-on-one coverage? That's something I'm going to look at in the Senior Bowl for Restrepo.
Yeah, that's
Real, how about you?
Yeah, that's where I had it at the Senior Bowl, is one-on-one reps and kind of looking at that. But it is impressive, and it's funny that you kind of had like the Cam Ward and like the neutral white flag, like the yellow flag sort of thing, because I kind of had it in almost like towards a green flag for me, and I do get it. I do believe that he can be rookie quarterback friendly to help out Cam Ward and things along those lines. So that would 100% work, but I think he could help out Caleb Williams. I think he could help out a lot of other quarterbacks in that situation sort of thing. And then getting into the NFL, he could be like, okay, I know how a quarterback operates and a play is never dead. Because, I mean, going back to Buffalo real quick, is Buffalo didn't have a lot of receivers, and when Josh Allen would scramble, a lot of them would come towards him, and it was a failure, right? It was just a complete failure. Don't run towards Josh Allen, run further, and then he'll throw it to you, sort of thing. So I feel like with Restrepo, he'll kind of understand where to be, and his situational awareness on the field can kind of help him at that. So I kind of almost see that as a little bit of a green flag. But even with playing with Cam Ward, his yards per route run was 2.5, which is impressive because Cam Ward likes to distribute the ball to a lot of people and things and like that. So he used him efficiently, counted for 53 first downs. He always does find those sticks, and you can tell when he knows where the sticks are, which I do love. That's NFL caliber. I have him as a top 40 guy, so I'm high on him. I think he doesn't get into the first round. I don't think the Senior Bowl all the offseason gets him into the first round, but I do have him in kind of like that run where last year in the second round, you went from like 36 to 45, and people started making their runs towards their wide receivers and things like that. So I see him right there in this draft. But I think he's pretty polished and an above average wide receiver to where the tape is better than the offseason, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think the only reason we see a little bit of discourse is I'm a guy that likes to bet on development, bet on traits, bet on ceiling. I think Restrepo is exactly what you're getting in the NFL, and he's going to be that for a good 10 years. Don't get me wrong. This is going to be a really reliable starter. It's just the upside for me, just a little bit.
Great point.
You see, and Josh, I like how you kind of like frame that up, right? Because everybody grades a little bit differently, and you're grading – you're looking for traits with a higher ceiling or a potentially higher ceiling. And you're thinking that Restrepo has a safe floor for you.
Super safe floor. Like
for sure.
The safest floor.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So
Cam
if
should
you had to
either
compare
get Restrepo or Arroyo. Either of those
Yes.
two, whichever one pans out, at least one of those two need to go to Cam.
And both are going to get taken really high. Like Restrepo's going day 2 no matter what. Royal could sneak himself into the 3rd round easily, especially after Senior Bowl. So somebody's going to take a high priority pick. If they decide to match those two up, it's going to be a great transition for Cam Ward, especially if you need him to start day 1.
Yeah, talk about a high ceiling. Arroyo's ceiling is, I don't even know where it is. It's so high.
I'm stashing Arroyo in my dynasty league.
There's
we have 2 times PPR on tight ends.
Yeah.
I'm grabbing him.
Yeah. I mean, he was 5-star coming out. I believe he was number 2 tight end out of his class out of high school, and it just didn't come together on some injuries. But man, the guy is unreal.
Get that guy in the middle of the field. Oh my.
Okay, so if you had to pick Restrepo, or let me rephrase that, if you had to compare and contrast Restrepo to Ladd McConkey, because McConkey went in that top 40 last year. Compare and contrast what those 2 wide receivers do or don't do the same.
Similar body types. You'll definitely see how friendly they are to the quarterback. I think Ladd's ability to create deep downfield, I think he's a better overall athlete, and his ability to win on those 20, 25-yard routes and his yards after catch is a little bit better for me. Very similar builds and very quarterback friendly, but Ladd's got those more explosive things. And even though the Chargers chargered, but Ladd McConkey showed exactly why he was such a high value wide receiver pick at that stature.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I love Ladd coming out. We were pretty high, Jim, when we were talking about Ladd McConkey in the draft. I'm pretty sure 49ers, which I do love Ricky Pearsall, probably kicking themselves, not taking Ladd McConkey over Ricky Pearsall. So that was unfortunate for the 49ers. But I love Ladd. I think his separation in the intermediate is what's a game changer, because everybody saw Ladd as a slot, except the people who watched film. But he clearly wasn't. He's better outside, in my opinion, and his stem of the route to get in the middle of the field gives him like 2 to 3 yards of separation. It's impressive. What Ladd did his rookie year was impressive.
Very.
Okay. And then one of the other questions I was going to ask is Jack Bech or Jayden Higgins?
For me, it's Jayden Higgins. It's Jayden Higgins by a comfortable amount. Close grades, but Higgins is the same body type for me. I think he separates better. He shows the same body control, catching traffic, especially on those goes down the sideline. I think Jack might have – they're very good route runners for their size, so they're definitely unique as an X, but I have Higgins a little bit higher, in my opinion.
Randall.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bech. I think he's a better route runner. I think he uses deception a little bit better at the stem, and especially in the red zone, he's really good. I think he's got a Cooper Kupp-esque route running sort of thing, where you kind of just watch him run routes and it's fluid, and then he gains separation where you kind of don't see it. So he's got that kind of intuitive zone coverage as well. So I've been high on Jack Bech for a while, so I'm going to keep planting that flag, so I won't. But Jayden Higgins has been creeping up, just like you have, has been creeping up, and he's kind of getting in that same boat. I would just prefer Jack Bech. So I'm not going to diminish anything about Jayden Higgins, to be honest.
No, I just saw a comment from Jim Nagy. He said on Twitter 2 hours ago, everybody knows how good Puka Nacua is, but not sure enough people appreciate how grimy he is, and that's what truly makes him so good. Someone commented under that, do you think Jack Bech is a similar player, albeit maybe not as athletic? He said simple answer is yes. So you're right on the hammer with Jack Bech, and I think NFL teams are well aware of Jack Bech's ability.
Yeah, that's true about Puka too.
So Ryan, Lee, or Bill, if you had to pick Higgins or Bech, which one's higher? If you're still following the pod. So be curious with that. And let's see some of the other guys that we've covered. Okay, so, and then, yeah. So Ryan likes Higgins more than Bech. Okay. So just a reminder for everybody watching and listening, hit the subscribe on YouTube, hit the like on YouTube, follow at NFL Draft Fanatic. It's the same channel on YouTube and X. That's where you're going to find daily draft content. And if you need to find the draft professors, the pinned post has 25 of their Twitter handles, which would include at Juice_T23 and at Randall Slifer. Okay? Give those guys a follow. There is daily draft discussion on Twitter. The channel has draft content every day. We have podcasts. I put out questions on player boards. So we have this chat that the 25 of us are in. People will start asking questions on players, and I'm like, well, that's just good content. I'm going to put it out so everybody on Twitter can answer. So give the page a follow, and we're really winding down scouting reports at this point. So by the time February rolls around, you're going to see a lot more people on the podcast, because if you're active in the chat, there's a good chance you're coming on a podcast. I have talked to a lot of you, and we can do a Tennessee Titans offseason, or we can do a Buffalo Bills offseason, Green Bay Packers, New York Giants. Whoever your team is, we'll do your offseason on a podcast. We'll talk about mock drafts. We'll talk about the players. You want to have a chance to ask Josh and Randall and myself what we think of either your mock draft or specific players. There's no reason to do it in a chat. You can just come on air and do it with us live. Right? We're going to bring this to the people. We are bringing the draft to the people. So everybody is much appreciated. So Josh or Randall, anything to say before we close this out?
I got one thing for both of you. See this jersey over here? We know who's going to win this week. That's all I'm going to say. Let's have a good game.
It's a big game.
Oh, is that a Baltimore?
Right? Yeah, so,
is that
if
Lamar
you
Jackson?
didn't know, he's a Ravens fan. So we got a Ravens fan and two Bills fans doing a draft podcast the Monday before the Bills play the Ravens in the playoffs.
I will say, since I do follow you, I appreciate that you're not insanely on the discourse of the MVP race, because it is bat crazy on Twitter, and it's driving me absolutely bonkers. Both are great quarterbacks. Just stop talking about it.
And you can even mention Burrow, Barkley as well. So many people
I know
deserve it this year, but Bills fans and Ravens fans know we could care less about the MVP. We have one goal in mind. We have one single thing in mind.
Super Bowl. Both deserve it. Whichever gets it first, somebody get it second. That's what I hope.
It's going to be a real treat, though. A true 50-50 game. We don't know.
What I'm, let's say, happiest about with Buffalo this year, this feels like the first playoff run in the last 6 years where Buffalo's healthy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So, because even in the Ravens game earlier in the year, Buffalo was missing, I believe, 6 starters.
Yes.
Milano. Big ones were Milano, Ed Oliver, and
Johnson was out.
And Terry Johnson, yeah.
And then Dawkins got injured in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, the game was over after the first quarter.
Yeah, true.
But no, Joe Brady's done an unbelievable job with that offense, and Von Miller does his once every other year playoff resurgence for 4 games. So you guys are pretty hot right now. It's going to be a game.
I mean, that's what's great about it. Vibes are high for both teams. It's just going to be a great watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Ryan Sparks, that's a great comment. So I think if the Bills never win a Super Bowl, Bills fans are going to see Derrick Henry in their nightmares. Because he did that when he was with Tennessee, and now he's doing it when he's with the Ravens.
He did it against us too. Earl Thomas took one to the face. It's a permanent mark. Glad he's on our side now.
Albeit, I mean, it was for Buffalo in Tennessee, it was Josh Norman on the year before he's about to retire, and that dude is small in general. I don't want to take away from Josh Norman because he was a great quarterback in Carolina and stuff like that. But yeah, he was just a sitting duck when Derrick Henry was running ahead of him.
No, and I was at the game in Nashville, where
Same.
Henry like housed it for 75 yards when he was still with the Titans. So that was like
Jim, where were
right
you
after
sitting?
COVID ended.
Real quick, because I know we're gonna go. Where were you sitting? Because I was there too. I was at the 20-yard line. Because I remember I busted up my side because I ran the 40. Because Tennessee always has the 40 on the outside before you go. I was like 12 beers deep.
There's a really good chance that you and I were in the same section. We didn't know each other at the time, but I was somewhere around the 20 or the 30.
Hey, I still ran a 5.10. It was after they clocked me. Did I drop it?
Cool. Well, we appreciate everybody that has been active in the chat. So Lee, Harvey, thank you. Welcome to the channel. Ryan Sparks, you are becoming the fanatic that we are looking for. And Bill Sparks, as usual, it is great to see you. So on behalf of all of the draft professors, for Randall, for Josh, myself, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again on a podcast tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on YouTube, X, and Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. If you have a moment, try using some of the Draft Professor mock draft functionality, including a first-round challenge, a second-round challenge, rank players, and draft a team. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on our daily draft podcast tomorrow.